I wanted to make a crosscut sled for my table saw, and I looked at all the plans and different videos online, and one really stuck out that had all the bells and whistles. It looked super nice, and the video was really nice on how to make it. And I went ahead and bought the plans from Nick Ferry and followed his video, and it turned out really nice. Check the description section down below for links to Nick's video and to his plans. I'm making the base and cutting some of the pieces that will end up being the front and back fence here. There's definitely some tips in here that I think will help if you make this, even if you watch Nick's video too. This is the glue up of the front and back fence. Make sure and don't glue those pieces together. You're just gluing the two pairs to each other, not all four pieces glued together. Probably helps keep them straight to have all four of the pieces in one clamping session. I used wooden runners instead of buying the runners. If you make your miter runners out of wood, you should have the grain running vertically in them. That way when the wood expands and contracts with humidity changes, it will expand less, because the way they are right now, it would expand more within the depth of the slot this way than it will this way. So you want your grain running vertically. That's maple that I'm making mine out of. I'll just put a thin line of glue on these runners. I don't want them to the glue to spread out and get on the table saw. I did put some pennies underneath these, so they're just slightly above the level of the table saw. Remember to leave some room underneath your runners for sawdust and stuff, so they shouldn't be rubbing on the bottom of the steel at all, or cast iron. Just screwing on the maple runners onto the bottom of the Baltic birch plywood. These Dewalt tools really work awesome. I love them. The drill and the impact driver. I'm going to cut the dados for the tracks. These screws I made a little long accidentally. I didn't cut off enough. They did not go all the way through, but they kind of pushed the wood and made a little bump on the other side. So I took them all out, cut a little more off. I hammered while they were out, I hammered the bump flat, sanded that, and then fixed it, and that works better. Cutting the fences to the final height here. Cutting the back fence, a little profile on it with a bandsaw. I don't have a spindle sander like Nick does, but I used a little sander on my drill press and made a little base for it with a Forstner bit that the sander fit into. And that actually worked quite well once I had that little base. If I tried to use it right here without the little base where the sanding thing was recessed down into the Forstner bit hole, it didn't really work very well. I'm attaching the back fence on permanently. Cutting the rabbet in the front fence. Here's where I had a problem. I cut through the front fence most of the way before I have done the 5-cut method, so there's really only 2 screws holding it, one on each side of that fence. What happened was it flexed into like 2 pieces. It was still attached barely at the very top, but when I tried to do the 5-cut method, I didn't realize at first, but every time I was pushing the plywood up against that front fence, it was flexing it a little bit. So I'd get done with the 5-cut method, come up with a number, and then I would make an adjustment, and I would test it again, and it would be off just as much or more, and I did it again and again. I was like, what the heck is going on? And then finally I saw it move, and I was like, oh shoot. And I realized what was happening. I went ahead and just remade the front fence, started off with a full piece again, and I didn't cut it all the way through until after I was completely done with the 5-cut method, and after all of the screws were in that front fence, so it was not going to move again. Here's another gotcha. The sled was kind of locking up and really hard to push, and I was thinking, oh, it must be binding on the runners that I'd cut. But it's not really. What you need to do if you have this problem is wax the bottom of your sled with paste wax first, including the sides of the runners and the whole bottom, and then wipe off the excess wax, because you should only have like a super tiny thin layer on there. And after that, the thing slid really nicely. For the 5-cut method, make sure and turn your plywood clockwise after each cut. So make sure that your cut is going towards your front fence. My fence was off negative 0.008 inches, or 8 thousandths. And since it's negative, what I want to do is I put this block in here, got a 8 thousandths feeler gauge, and there's a gap in there. So I will take the screw out, move the fence up since it's negative, and then I'll put a new hole in and put the screw in the new hole, and that should adjust it, and then I'll redo the 5-cut method and see how that came out. I'm cutting the rabbet in the front fence here for the top track. Pretty exciting. I'm using the crosscut sled to cut the little pieces for the safety blocks that I hide the blade with, where the blade comes through the back of the sled. Cutting a little piece for the miter part of it. Putting bevels on that. To mount the miter jig in the sled, use these 1/4 inch 20, these bolts. These are 1.25 inches long. The head fits into these tracks, and if you start from the other side and slide it through here, it will just go right through there, and then you can mount, put one in each. You just slide the miter piece down on top of the 2 bolts that you slid into the tracks, and you can tighten that down, and then you're ready for miter cuts. This stop block is really nice. It swivels up out of the way. You can set the measuring to like 3 inches, tighten this down, and it's all solid. Put your piece in, and then you're ready to cut. And you can use it on either side of the blade. I hope that helps if you're making a crosscut sled. Be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget about the links in the description. Do the little click on the show more, and you can find the links to Nick's video and his plans and different parts and pieces that were used on this.